Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this past weekend, Jermall Charlo defeated Juan Macias Montiel to defend his WBC middleweight title. Now before this fight took place, a lot of people were complaining about the opponent in Montiel. Ultimately, Montiel going into this fight was somewhat of an unknown, and all in all, he's just not a world level fighter, if we're being honest. He's a tough dude who comes to fight, but in terms of skill, in terms of ability and whatnot, there's really not much there with Juan Montiel. And ultimately that thought process was set by fans when this fight got made, and as a result, people were expecting Jermall Charlo to basically blow this guy away. Ultimately, when you are a high-profile fighter, and when you're fighting a guy like this, the expectation is to blow him away, and Jermall Charlo failed to do that. We saw on the same weekend, Naoya Inoue knock out Michael Dasmariñas in the third round in a dominant performance. When a world-class fighter or special fighter is in there with that sort of opponents, he's expected to dispatch of him with relative ease. That's exactly what Naoya Inoue did, but Jermall Charlo, on the other hand, didn't exactly do that. And really it got me debating just how good is Jermall Charlo at 160 pounds. Now, my thoughts in regards to the actual performance by Jermall Charlo, I mean, he clearly won the fight, he clearly won the vast majority of rounds, and he won this fight decisively, but all in all it was a workmanlike performance. I felt he looked pretty predictable at times, one-paced. I felt he looked a bit more lethargic than usual, and as the fight wore on, particularly in the last sort of 3 or 4 rounds, I felt Jermall Charlo looked a bit tired, and it looked like he was gassing a little bit, So all in all, it wasn't an impressive performance by Jermall Charlo, and it's got me wondering about his standings in the middleweight division. Just how good is Jermall Charlo at middleweight? I've been asking this question for far too long at this point. Jermall Charlo moved up to middleweight in 2017 after he knocked out Julian Williams in 2016, and in that time period he's only really fought one legit middleweight contender in Sergey Derevyanchenko. On that night I thought he put on a decent performance, but apart from that, his reign at middleweight so far has been extremely underwhelming, and it's got me even questioning Jermall Charlo's punching power at 160. When you look at Jermall Charlo's record at 160, look at the guys he's knocked out. He knocked out Hugo Centeno Jr., who was moving up from 154. He knocked out Dennis Hogan, who was moving up from 154. And he knocked out Jorge Sebastian Hyland, who, while he was a middleweight, he was injured on fight night. So when you look at it, Jermall Charlo has not knocked out a healthy, legit middleweight. He went the distance with Sergey Derevyanchenko, which, to be fair, isn't a bad look. Derevyanchenko's very tough, but he also went the distance with Matt Korobov, whose chin is very questionable, and also at that point, Matt Korobov was injury-torn and whatnot. He went the distance with Brandon Adams, a guy coming up from 154, and he went the distance with Juan Montiel, a fringe contender at very best. So when you look at his run at 160, in 4 years he's not knocked out a healthy, legit top 10 middleweight. So while Jermall Charlo has this puncher's reputation, at this point in time, I am starting to question that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he can't punch at all. He's clearly heavy-handed somewhat, but all I'm saying is I can't see the evidence to really suggest that he's the puncher a lot of people make out that he is. And obviously at 154, punching power was a big aspect of Jermall Charlo's game, but that power doesn't seem to be as effective at 160. And, take away that power, if he's not as effective with that power, does he really have a skill set to be a dominant middleweight champion? Jermall Charlo is, relatively sound fundamentally. He's got a nice jab, a nice straight right hand, got a pretty good understanding of distance, nice left hook, decent timing. He's a decent fighter. He does the basics well, but I'm not really seeing a fighter there that can, take the middleweight division by the scruff of the neck and really dominate it. I mean, right now, take Jermall Charlo against the other middleweight champions. Would you comfortably pick him to beat any of these guys? I would probably favour him to beat Ryota Murata, but that's really it. But even that fight to me is hard to call. I wouldn't pick him to beat Gennady Golovkin, and as for Demetrius Andrade, I'm completely unsure, if I'm being honest. Even Jaime Munguia, if Jermall Charlo can't get Munguia's respect and he can't seriously hurt him, that's going to be a hell of a hard night for Jermall Charlo. Right now, to me, Jermall Charlo doesn't seem to be as dynamic as he was at 154. You know, at 154 he was fighting better competition. He fought K9 Bundridge to win the world title. He fought a tough mandatory challenger in Julian Williams. He fought a veteran in Austin Trout. The level of competition for Jermall Charlo at 154 was much better than it was at middleweight. And sometimes, when a fighter has been feasting on sort of C-level guys for a long time, guys who are not at his level, that's when, you know, you can actually start to develop bad habits and get too comfortable and almost stagnate as a fighter. The only legit fight Jermall Charlo has had at 160 is Sergey Derevyanchenko. And to be fair, in that fight, he actually performed quite well. Maybe Jermall Charlo is one of these guys that fights down to the level of opposition. I do believe that is a real thing, but, you know, Jermall Charlo can't stay messing around fighting these sort of guys. At some point, he needs to roll the dice and just fight top-level competition consistently. You know, and this is coming from somebody who rated Jermall Charlo at 154. I thought he was going to do very good things in the middleweight division when he moved up back in 2017. But to be honest, in those 4 years that Jermall Charlo's been in the middleweight division, ultimately he's given us one fight that was of any consequence, and that was Sergey Derevyanchenko. And again, when that fight did happen, I was happy and I gave Jermall Charlo credit for winning. But, you know, apart from that, man, he's really done nothing in 4 years. That's a large period of somebody's career in boxing. 4 years is a big chunk of somebody's career. And, you know, quite frankly, apart from Derevyanchenko, it feels like the last 4 years of Jermall Charlo have been wasted. I mean, 4 years ago, Jermall Charlo was seen as, you know, the main brother out of the Charlo brothers. He was seen as the leading light kind of thing. And while Jermall Charlo has taken the loss since then, he's on the verge of fighting for Undisputed. He's built his resume in that time. He's really elevated himself to the next level, whereas Jermall Charlo has stayed at the same level, or in fact actually gone down in boxing fans' estimations. So, how old is Jermall Charlo now? I think he's 31, 32, something like that. He's in his early 30s, and as far as I'm concerned, for the most part, he's wasted the past 4 years. Jermall Charlo's got a lot of time to make up, in my opinion. There are fights out there for him. There are fights, I believe, that he should pursue. But ultimately, that's up to him. Right now, personally, I am starting to lose a lot of patience in Jermall Charlo. Again, I think he's a good fighter. I think he can give anybody a hard fight. And who knows, maybe he is the best middleweight in the world. But right now, it just seems like he's not willing to prove it. And he's happy fighting the guys he's fighting. I mean, this is a guy who turned down, $7 million to fight Demetrius Andrade. That's the sort of fight I'm talking about. A unification fight. A fight that would improve his resume. If he were to beat Andrade, you know, it's a good look to be a unified champion, but he just doesn't seem hungry to improve his resume or build a legacy for himself. You know, it just seems like he's here to fight these sort of guys they put in front of him and get paid. And if that's what he wants to do, fair enough, but don't complain that you're not the star that you feel you should be and whatnot. So yeah, to me, the last 4 years of Jermall Charlo have been extremely disappointing. Again, I go back to that Andrade situation where he turned down a career-high payday. He called out David Benavidez to fight at 168, then he made loads of stipulations and went back on his word. You know, it's these sort of things, man. These are fights that he could have taken or could still take. I'm sure DAZN and Eddie will actually be willing to work with Andrade and Al Heyman to make that fight. Why not pursue it? But even after Montiel, Jermall Charlo's out here saying Andrade's a horrible fighter, he needs to do this, that and the other to get a fight. I mean, your resume's not looking too good right now, bro. It's not like you're the golden carrot that all of these fighters are chasing. No, you're Jermall Charlo. You've got a couple of good wins on your entire resume. You're not Floyd Mayweather. You're not Manny Pacquiao. Who are you to really kind of dictate to a guy what he needs to do to get a fight with you? It's a fight in which both guys should be chasing with open arms. It's a great fight. That's the sort of fight I want for Jermall Charlo. It's all well and good calling out Canelo Alvarez when you know he wants to fight Caleb Plant at 168. It's all well and good calling out Gennady Golovkin when he's got a fight with Murata back end of the year. These guys are basically booked up, and we know that. Everyone knows that. Why not call out Demetrius Andrade? Why not even call out Jaime Munguia? These are both fights which would improve Charlo's resume, no doubt about it. But right now Jermall Charlo seems to be, not really in it for the legacy, to be honest, and that is disappointing. Again, I'm not using this as like a PBC hit piece. In my opinion, PBC this year have been the best promotional company. I think they've put on the best fights. I've been critical of PBC in the past, but this year I think they're doing better than the other promoters. So it's not a PBC thing. It's just a Jermall Charlo thing. As somebody who used to rate him highly at 154, I don't think he's carried that form to 160. He's not fought the same level of competition, and quite frankly, he's just been disappointing. I mean, I can't see that, being a controversial opinion, but it is what it is. But share your thoughts below. What do you make of Jermall Charlo's run at 160? How do you rate him at 160? And what should he do next? Share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.